So I've entitled this message, Self-Care in Challenging Times. And I want to begin with a quote from a friend's recent post on Facebook who writes these words. I know this is weird, but do any of you feel like you cannot stop crying an ocean of tears? I do, and it may be from family hurts, kids, or political fears and instability, not trusting what we have always known. End of her quote. And I would like to add, not trusting what we have always known, especially in a new COVID world. It's been a long and difficult and challenging time ever since the COVID pandemic burst into our world and our personal lives back in March of 2020. Like 9/11, 2001, the year 2020 will be etched in our minds and our hearts for a long, long time to come. We will not forget the tragic death toll now rising toward 220,000 lives, and that number, we are told, could even double in size. We will not forget the economic toll of millions of jobs lost and businesses failed, or the social toll of mass quarantines, schools closed or gone online, transportation vastly limited, families unable to see one another, families needing food assistance, medical facilities being overstressed, events and celebrations canceled, parents working from home, or as my son likes to say, living at work, and trying to school their kids from home at the same time, and everyone, it seems, staying mostly at home, confined so much of the time. I wonder, has anybody coined the phrase COVID stress syndrome to describe what we are all experiencing in one way or another? But as if COVID wasn't enough to try and cope with, 2020 is also a huge election year, with so much riding on this presidential election and the question of who will control the Senate and increasingly the politicized Supreme Court. And then there is the governor's election and the state legislators' elections. So on top of COVID stress syndrome, we're also exposed to election stress syndrome. So what are we all to do with all this stress? Don't you just want to scream or cry like my friend who posted on Facebook, or just sit around sort of in a depressed daze? I tried to scream in the car one day out of frustration. It didn't help. It just hurt my throat, and emotionally, I didn't feel any better. There's just got to be some better ways to feel better and take care of ourselves better in these crazy and stressful days. And then I remembered the advice of one of my graduate school professors at Boston University who said this: you know, your best sermons will be the ones that you yourself need to hear and be reminded of the things you yourself need to do. And I thought to myself, what I need right now more than most anything is to pay attention to my own self-care to get through these challenging times. Because when we are overstressed, self-care is usually the first thing that goes. We stop eating well, we stop exercising routinely, we tense up and lose our ability to relax. We may stop socializing and withdraw from others. In many ways, we get out of our normal routines, our normal rituals in life, all of which increases our stress level to a point of unhappiness, frustration, anxiety, negative emotions that can cause pain, physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, mental anguish. All of these things must be addressed in our lives if we are to lead a happy and balanced life. So today, I want to remind us all that there are 5 different types of areas of self-care. The first being physical self-care, or self-care of our body. Things that affect our bodies like eating well, sleeping well, personal hygiene, resting when tired, getting enough exercise, all those things that affect the well-being of our bodies. The second is mental self-care, or self-care of our minds. Things like reading, playing games that stimulate the mind, thinking positively rather than dwelling on the negative, learning to control an overactive mind, learning how to stimulate a dull mind, or relax an overstressed mind. Third, emotional self-care, or self-care of the heart, learning to be more aware of our emotions, facing and coping with griefs and losses head on. Issues today that are causing much grief because of the COVID that we're all experiencing all around us, or other situations because of the state of our government being so ineffective in meeting the needs of all of its citizens. Self-care can help us cope with sadness or loneliness or anger and point us towards a happier outlook on life. Shortly, I will get to many self-care methods, but now the fourth area is feeding the soul, spiritual self-care, our connection to something greater than ourselves, an ideal that guides us, perhaps a philosophy or religion or science or humanism, something of that type beyond ourselves, bigger than ourselves, ways in which we can feed our soul. And the fifth and last area is the area of professional care, care that guides and assists our caring ourselves. Things like seeing a medical doctor or a psychotherapist or other types of therapists that help us cope with physical or emotional issues. There are even professional spiritual guides that can help us cope with our spiritual needs. And so I encourage you all to do a personal self-care assessment in these 5 areas, starting with the first 4, body, mind, heart, and soul. How do you think you're doing in each of these areas? Be honest with yourself. Where are your weaknesses? Where would you like to improve? Take some time to think about these 4 areas, our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs. Write down a list of things that appeal to you about what your needs seem to be. Some areas we may be doing well in, and others not so much. Some areas may be a real cause for concern for you right now, and you may need professional help, or you realize they could be a cause of concern later if you don't attend to these particular types of things now. Ongoing self-care is an essential part of living the good life, and we must take good care of ourselves to be able to take good care of others who may rely on us. After you have done your own assessment of these 4 areas, you can decide if your greatest needs are of a nature that is beyond what you can do for yourself in self-care. If that is the case, I really do strongly encourage you to pursue professional care. From personal experience, I know that professionals can do wonders to help people. So I will now focus on self-care in the non-professional or medical areas. But nonetheless, these practical applications of self-care have been studied and shown to be effective for many, many people. First, let me say self-care requires discipline and practice as applied to the 4 areas, body, mind, heart, and soul. Using discipline and practice, we can show some love for ourselves as we apply techniques of self-care. We will also tap into our creative side, the creative side which makes all of this fun and enjoyable. And that will make us happy, which in itself is self-care giving. I did not know this until researching for this sermon, that we human beings actually have happiness chemicals available to us that are activated in our bodies when we do certain things that stimulate their production. And they are great forms of self-care. So I've got this chart of the 4 chemicals, and I want to run through them. The first chemical is dopamine. It's known as the reward chemical. The second is oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone. The third chemical is serotonin, the mood stabilizer. The fourth is endorphin, which is known as the painkiller. Our job with these chemicals is to figure out the best ways to trigger them for ourselves. So let's look at each one more closely. First, dopamine, the reward chemical, is triggered by the good feelings of completing a task. I'll give some examples from my own self-care activities as we go on. Back in the springtime, shortly after the COVID outbreak, I gave myself the task of re-landscaping our front yard. This engaged my creativity as I drew up plans and chose materials and disciplined myself to work a few hours each day on this project that took about a month to complete. Completing this task must have triggered a whole lot of dopamine within me because I felt great at its completion. I felt a sense of satisfaction and even elation. Dopamine is also triggered by preparing and eating healthy and satisfying food. Marcy has been, I think, doing self-care for both herself and for me by cooking up a storm. And she's working wonders at finding new recipes and selecting really healthy quality foods, mostly organic, in order to cook. And I'm the one who goes out shopping at Trader Joe's in the senior hours, early in the morning, to buy all the ingredients. So that's another way that dopamine is triggered within us. Let's move on to the second chemical, which is oxytocin, the love hormone, which is triggered by playing with a pet or a baby or a child or a grandchild, couples holding hands, giving compliments to others, activities that bond us to others and the world around us. And these days, some of that is like using the Zoom on a Sunday morning or FaceTiming with relatives and friends. Back in June, we decided that it was time to get another cat since our previous one had died over a year ago. This has been some of the best self-care medicine for Marcy after all of her cancer treatments. I also highly recommend things like feeding the birds. And we were feeding birds before this started, but we've added more bird feeders to see more birds and different types of birds as the COVID confinement has gone on. And the joys of just watching the birds also can trigger your oxytocin levels. So you have to think about things that you enjoy doing that are good triggers for you in these different areas. Let's move on to number 3, the serotonin, the mood stabilizer. This is triggered by walks in nature. And so something that Marcy and I have done much more these days is to find new places to go walking, more secluded places to go walking. And we generally walk 2 to 3 miles each day. And even if the day's inclement, we exercise indoors. Marcy's found a walk at home application on her iPhone, or you could access it on YouTube. That's called Walk at Home with Leslie Sansone. So there are ways to do these things. Exercise, physical exercise is so important in triggering serotonin in our bodies. And every morning when I wake up, I do Tai Chi for about 20 minutes. And both Marcy and I enjoy doing yoga. And if yoga is something that it's difficult for you to get up and down with on the floor, you can find applications online to do yoga in a chair, sitting in a chair. So things like this that we can find that we can adapt to our own use. Another thing that I usually don't tell most people is that I've started dancing alone in my room. So I put on old beach music on a CD. In my room, I have a man space, a man cave, as some would say. And I put on this music and nobody's watching, and I can just move to the music and let go. And it's physical exercise as well as mental relaxation, and it does wonders for the body. Listening to nice music. We have classical music on the radio more than ever these days. But any kind of music, the kind that really works for you and has a both enlivening effect and a calming effect. Music can be used both ways. Now, Dr. Fauci has recommended that we take extra vitamin D during these times, and he says 6,000 IUs daily. Well, I don't take quite that much, but I've been taking 2,000 IUs daily, and also sunshine, just getting a little sunshine. So sitting outdoors for 5 to 10 minutes in the sun can work wonders in raising that serotonin level, which has wonderful self-care effects on us. And last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about meditation, which is another fine trigger for serotonin. In the UU tradition, both Emerson and Thoreau were known meditators. And then we have transcendental meditation by one of the yogis who sort of borrowed that term from them. But meditation can take many forms, from transcendental meditation to guided imagery meditation, to meditating on listening to music, to simply watching your in-breath and out-breath, breath meditation, to complete silence, just sitting and listening to the sounds around you. Especially that's nice to do in nature. To mindfulness meditation made popular by the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. Perhaps his best known meditation is simply using the words and repeating them on the in-breath and the out-breath. Breathing in, I relax. Breathing out, I smile. As simple as that, just over and over. Try that for 5 minutes. On the in-breath, say, breathing in, I relax. Breathing out, I smile. And you'll notice its calming effect and healing effect. Another favorite of mine is using a Hebrew mantra, using the word ruach, which is breathing in the spirit, and exhaling and using the word shalom, which is peace. So breathing in ruach, breathing out shalom. So these are practicing the presence of breath, or you might like practicing the presence of light, focusing, say, in your solar plexus and choosing your favorite color and envisioning that radiating out from your solar plexus. Or you may like to practice inner peace and just sit in that silence and think peaceful thoughts. Spiritual disciplines like these have great benefits of relaxation, not only to the body and the mind, but also to the heart, and they feed the soul. They've also been shown medically to lower blood pressure, to decrease anxiety, to clear our minds of clutter and boost our energy levels and stabilize our moods towards greater happiness. Let's move on to the fourth chemical called endorphin. It's known as the painkiller. Some of you are going to absolutely love this one, believe me, because one of its triggers is eating high percentage dark chocolate. Of course, you want to eat this in moderation, but dark chocolate is really good for you, and it boosts our endorphins in our systems, and it's medically been proven as a painkiller. Other triggers are exercise, which we already talked about in the serotonin section, and laughter. Aren't we all lucky that laughter is good medicine in our self-care? So you might want to, in the evening or even during the day, turn on the TV and watch a great sitcom. Marcy and I have gone back to shows like Frasier or Seinfeld in the evenings. They work wonders and give us laughs. For many years, Marcy and I would tape Jay Leno's Late Show monologue when we lived out in New Mexico to watch the next evening at our 10 o'clock bedtime and fall asleep with a laugh. It's amazing how that is able to help us to get to sleep easier and to sleep better. And recently we've discovered a different approach that puts a smile on our faces and endorphins in our system by watching something on YouTube. It's called Moving Art. Moving Art by Louis Schwartzberg. Oh, and Marcy says it's also on Netflix. It's of his slow motion photography taken in nature on topics like flowers and trees and beautiful islands and colorful fish in the ocean, waterfalls, all these beautiful images in nature that he films and sets to soothing music. And they are wonderful self-care methods of falling asleep at night and then having sweet dreams. Now is a good time for an endorphin joke. So, my wife got out a world map and then gave me a dart, and she said, "Throw this dart, and wherever it lands, that's where we're going after this pandemic ends." Turns out we're spending 2 weeks behind the refrigerator. That one got a laugh out of Marcy. So I encourage you all to make your own list of activities, of things like I've already mentioned, and that you take this as your homework assignment from my sermon. Draw up a list of things that would work for you and keep that as an ongoing list of your self-care activities. I want to add another thing, creative activities. So during this COVID time, Marcy has decided that she would like to learn how to paint some watercolors. And she's found some things, I guess they're tutorials on the computer that you can watch, and you can actually paint along with an artist. And she's been doing this for several months now and doing incredible things. And I'm wondering if we might do a little show and tell, if we can switch back to me. And okay, I'm showing this picture up. This is one of her paintings that she has done, and it gives her a great deal of satisfaction. Does all these wonderful self-care things for her during this difficult time. Another thing that I've been doing is I got a vegetable plot garden at the senior center in Cary, and have been tending vegetables all summer long and working my hands in the dirt. One of the things that we started doing, perhaps our biggest project, which is ongoing, we decided to do a memoir together. And we've been mapping out each decade of our lives and our lives together, because we've been together since age 22, or 21 actually. And we're doing this memoir for our kids and our grandkids so that they will know us in new and different ways and hopefully find some things interesting and inspiring out of it. But it's become our big project to do together. And it stimulates us in all these wonderful ways, especially our minds, and gives us wonderful memories that we hadn't thought about for many years. Things like writing a daily journal can also be very nurturing to us in body, mind, soul, and spirit. Creating your own rituals. Another thing that I do every morning as a ritual is to do the Native American ritual of the 4 directions, facing east and south and west and north, and saying some ritual words that ground me to this beautiful earth that is our mother. Another thing is to think about balanced use of social media for education as well as connecting to people. and making sure that you do that in a healthy and balanced way. Finally, I want to end with a quote from a letter written by Albert Camus. He writes, "In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer." And that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back. May it be so for each of us in our self-care in these difficult times. Amen.
Our closing